The hum of fluorescent lights always reminded Mark of hospitals. That faint, sterile buzz above his head seemed louder during night shifts, when the grocery store aisles stood empty, echoing with the occasional clink of a restocking cart. Mark had worked the overnight shift at Cedar Mart, a rundown convenience store on the edge of town, for nearly 3 years. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid his rent and kept food on the table. He told himself he didn't mind the solitude. In fact, sometimes he liked it. After all, there was no manager breathing down his neck, no impatient customers demanding refunds. Just silence, a pot of burnt coffee, and his own thoughts. But that silence was never complete. The building itself made noises. Pipes groaned through the thin walls, refrigeration units clicked to life with a sudden rumble, and sometimes the automatic sliding doors creaked as if shifting against the wind, even when no one approached. At first, Mark wrote it all off as quirks of the store. Buildings aged, wires loosened, and foundations settled. Still, there were nights when he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. The job was simple. Stock shelves, mop floors, keep an eye on the register. After 2 a.m., the place was usually dead. Only truckers, insomniacs, or the occasional teenager looking for energy drinks passed through. The customers never lingered. No one wanted to hang around Cedar Mart longer than necessary. Tonight felt no different. Mark leaned behind the counter, sipping bitter coffee while scrolling through his phone. His eyelids drooped. Sleep always came hardest between 3 and 4 a.m., the dead hour when the body begged to shut down. He rubbed his eyes, stood, and decided to restock the chips aisle to fight the drowsiness. The bell over the door chimed just as he grabbed a box cutter. He glanced up. The doors slid open with a hollow sigh, but no one entered. Cold air pushed in from the parking lot, stirring the rows of candy wrappers by the register. Probably the wind, he muttered. He left the counter and checked the entrance. The parking lot stretched out under the sickly orange glow of a single street lamp. Empty. No cars, no figures crossing the cracked pavement. Just silence and the faint static buzz of the lamp fighting against moths. Mark shut the door. Damn sensors are oversensitive. He tried to shake it off, focusing instead on the chips aisle. One by one, he stacked bags onto shelves. Sour cream and onion, barbecue, salt and vinegar. The repetitive motion soothed him. A normal night, he told himself. Nothing strange. Nothing dangerous. Then came the first sound. It was faint, like a whisper carried through vents. A dragging noise. Mark froze, one hand still clutching a crinkled bag of chips. His eyes darted down the aisle. Nothing. He waited, holding his breath, but the sound didn't repeat. Jesus, Mark, he muttered, forcing a laugh. You're hearing things. Back at the counter, he checked the security monitors. 4 black and white feeds flickered. Parking lot, back hallway, front entrance, and the rear stockroom. All empty. All still. He exhaled slowly. See? Just the building. But the unease clung to him like damp clothes. By 3:30 a.m., the coffee had gone cold. Mark sat with his arms folded on the counter, chin resting on his sleeve. The soft drone of refrigeration units filled the silence. He was drifting when the bell chimed again. His head shot up. The doors slid open. And this time, someone entered. A man. Tall, gaunt, wearing a hooded sweatshirt too big for his thin frame. He moved strangely, shoulders hunched, head tilted slightly to one side as though listening to something Mark couldn't hear. His sneakers scraped the floor with each step. Evening, Mark called, trying to sound casual. The man didn't respond. He walked past the counter without glancing up, disappearing into aisle 3. Mark's stomach tightened. The guy hadn't even looked at him. Customers were usually half asleep or grumpy at this hour, sure, but they at least muttered a hello or asked for directions to the coffee. This man seemed disconnected, like he wasn't really there. Mark checked the monitor again. The figure's outline moved through aisle 3, but the grainy footage made details impossible to read. He kept watching, waiting for the man to approach the counter with a purchase. Minutes passed. Nothing. Finally, Mark decided to check. He walked into aisle 3. Empty. "Sir?" he called, his voice echoing faintly. No answer. He scanned the aisle, peering behind displays. Nothing. A chill crept up his arms. The aisle ended against a blank wall. No exit, no back door. No way the man could have slipped past in the seconds Mark had been away. But he was gone. Mark backed toward the counter, his heart thudding. He forced himself to breathe steadily, telling himself he'd imagined it. Maybe the coffee, maybe exhaustion, maybe both. Night shifts did things to the mind. And yet, when he returned to the counter, something waited on top of it. A single item. A small bag of sour cream and onion chip. Mark stared at it, mouth dry. He hadn't heard footsteps return. He hadn't seen anyone pass. The registers hadn't beeped. The bag sat neatly, perfectly centered on the counter. And in that moment, Mark knew two things for certain. He was wide awake. And he wasn't alone. The sour cream and onion chips sat on the counter like an accusation. Mark didn't move for a full minute, eyes fixed on the bag. He wanted to believe he'd put it there himself, maybe without realizing. Maybe he'd carried it from the aisle while distracted, then forgot. But deep down, he knew better. He reached out with trembling fingers and picked it up. The crinkling plastic seemed deafening in the silence. Slowly, he turned toward the shelves where he had just stocked the chip. He scanned them carefully. Every flavor sat in neat, uniform rows, except sour cream and onion. A gap remained exactly where one had been removed. Mark swallowed hard. "Hello?" His voice cracked. "If you're still in here, the store's closing soon." Lie. The store never closed. No answer. The cameras offered no comfort. On the monitors, every aisle was empty, each frame frozen in its eerie stillness. Parking lot, empty. Back hallway, empty. Stockroom, empty. But Mark could feel it, that prickling on the back of his neck, that subtle awareness when someone's eyes are on you. He rubbed at the gooseflesh rising on his arms. He set the chips down and forced himself back into routine. Routine meant safety. Routine meant control. He mopped the back hallway, wiped down the counters, even rechecked the freezer temperature logs. Anything to anchor himself. But the noises kept coming. At first, it was faint, a distant shuffling like shoes dragging across linoleum. Then came the creak of metal shelving, the faint clatter of cans shifting as though someone brushed past them. Every time Mark investigated, the sound stopped. He began to doubt his own sanity. Night shifts wore people down, he knew that. His coworker, Reggie, had quit last year after claiming the building was off. He'd laughed at the time, chalking it up to paranoia. Now, he wasn't so sure. At 4:07 a.m., things escalated. The intercom crackled to life. Mark nearly dropped the mop. The PA system hadn't worked in years. Corporate refused to repair it. Yet, the speakers hissed above his head, filling the store with static. Then, beneath the static, a whisper. Low. Garbled. Inhuman. "Mark." The mop clattered to the floor. He stood frozen, heart hammering, staring up at the dusty speaker in the ceiling. The static faded. Silence returned. His mouth went dry. No one should know his name. He snatched the store phone and dialed his manager. Straight to voicemail. He hung up and tried again. Same result. Finally, he dialed the police, then hesitated. What would he even say? A ghost bought chips and whispered my name through broken speakers? They'd think he was insane. He set the phone down, palms sweating. The bell above the door chimed again. Mark spun, adrenaline spiking. The sliding doors yawned open. This time, the parking lot light flickered, sputtering like a dying candle. Shadows bent unnaturally against the cracked pavement. No one entered. Mark's chest rose and fell in shallow gasps. He stared at the doorway until the doors slid shut again with a hollow sigh. "Enough," he muttered. His voice shook. "You're just tired. Just tired." He turned back to the counter. And froze. Another bag of chips sat neatly on the counter. Not the first one. A second bag. Different flavor, barbecue. And next to it, resting carefully upright, was a can of soda. Both items perfectly aligned like offerings. Mark's breath caught in his throat. Someone, or something, was toying with him. His eyes flicked to the monitors. The aisles stood empty. He rewound the footage 20 seconds. Static lines danced across the feed, but nothing appeared. No movement. No figure placing the items. When the footage resumed, the chips and soda were simply there. Mark backed away from the counter until he hit the opposite wall. His pulse thundered in his ears. The store felt smaller now, suffocating. Every buzzing light seemed too bright, every shadow too deep. The dragging noise returned. Louder this time. SHHK, SHHK, SHK. Slow. Methodical. Approaching from aisle 3. Mark's hands curled into fists. Who's there? His voice broke. Come out. The sound stopped. For a moment, the silence was worse than the noise. He stood paralyzed, listening so hard his ears rang. Then, a single can rolled from the mouth of aisle 3. It rattled across the floor, spinning in uneven circles until it bumped gently against his shoe. Mark looked down. The can was dented, label half peeled, and smeared across the aluminum, in a sticky, dark residue that looked disturbingly like dried blood, was one word. Stay. Mark staggered back, knocking over the mop bucket. Dirty water spilled across the tiles, spreading like a black stain under the harsh lights. His chest heaved. His instincts screamed at him to run, to flee into the parking lot, call the cops, leave everything behind. But his legs wouldn't move. Because just then, the intercom crackled again. The same distorted whisper slithered through the speakers. Don't leave me, Mark. And this time, he swore he could hear laughter beneath it. Mark's knuckles turned white around the edge of the counter. He felt trapped, the fluorescent-lit aisles stretching like prison corridors. Every instinct screamed, run. Get out. Don't look back. But something stronger held him in place. That voice. The way it knew his name. The way it wanted him. The intercom hissed again, filling the store with static. The voice slithered through, closer, sharper. You always stay. You never leave. Mark shook his head violently. Shut up. You're not real. But the store answered. The lights flickered, buzzing like angry hornets. Shadows stretched across the aisles, bending in unnatural shapes. The automatic doors at the entrance slammed open, then shut, then open again, like the building itself was breathing. Mark stumbled back. His shoe hit the can on the floor. The one that read stay. The sticky residue smeared against the tile as it rolled into the dark mouth of aisle 3. And then, the sound returned. SHHK, SHHK, SHK. Closer. Mark's breath hitched. His eyes locked on the aisle. He expected to see the hooded man emerge, gaunt and silent, dragging his feet like before. But what came out was worse. A figure emerged, tall and thin, body twisted as though its bones didn't fit together properly. Its skin, or what passed for it, seemed stretched too tight, waxy and gray beneath the fluorescent glow. The hood from before still clung to its head, but now, beneath the shadow, Mark saw its face. Or what was left of it. Sunken eyes, hollow and black. A mouth far too wide, corners splitting up its cheeks in a grotesque grin. And the sound, it wasn't dragging its shoes. It was dragging its hands. Long, skeletal fingers scraped across the linoleum, leaving faint trails as it pulled itself toward him. Mark's legs finally responded. He bolted behind the counter, fumbling for the baseball bat stashed beneath it. His hands shook so badly he almost dropped it. The thing stopped halfway down the aisle. Its head tilted, jerky and insect-like, as though studying him. Then it spoke. Not through the intercom. Through its own mouth. Stay with me, Mark. Hearing it directly made his stomach flip. The voice wasn't just sound, it carried weight, like it was pressing against his chest, forcing the air from his lungs. Mark raised the bat, sweat dripping down his temple. Stay away. The thing twitched. Then, impossibly, it stood fully upright. Its head scraped the ceiling tiles as it leaned forward, grin widening. The cameras flickered on the monitor. Static warped each feed, distorting the image until the figure appeared everywhere at once. Aisle 3, the stockroom, the parking lot, even behind him. For one horrible second, Mark thought it really was everywhere. He spun, bat raised. Nothing. When he turned back, the thing was gone. Silence. Mark's chest heaved as he scanned the aisles. Empty. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. Had it vanished? No. The bell over the door chimed. Slowly, Mark's gaze shifted to the entrance. The sliding doors had opened. Beyond them, under the sputtering orange glow of the street lamp, the figure stood waiting. Still, motionless, like a shadow burned into reality. Mark's stomach twisted. It was trying to lure him out. He gripped the bat tighter, forcing his shaking legs to move. One step. Then another. He wasn't sure what he meant to do. Run past it, swing at it, something, but standing frozen would kill him faster than action. As he neared the doors, cold air rushed in. The figure didn't move. Its head only twitched slightly, as if in amusement. Mark's reflection stared back at him from the glass. But something was wrong. The reflection wasn't his. In the glass, he saw himself standing in the parking lot, gaunt and hooded, dragging his hands across the pavement with that same grotesque grin. Mark stumbled back, heart slamming against his ribs. The reflection tilted its head, perfectly mirroring the creature outside. The bat slipped from his grip. "No," he whispered. "That's not me." The glass fogged, as though someone were breathing against it from the other side. A single word appeared, smeared by invisible fingers. "Mine." The lights exploded. Every bulb in the store popped in rapid succession, plunging the aisles into darkness. The monitors went black. The hum of machines died. In the silence, only one sound remained. SHHK, SHHK, SHK. Right behind him. Mark spun, blind in the dark. His pulse roared in his ears. He swung wildly, the bat connecting with empty air. Then, fingers closed around his wrist. Cold. Bone-thin. Strong. He screamed as the bat clattered to the floor. The thing pulled him closer, its breath hot against his face. Though he couldn't see it clearly, he felt the grin, wide and endless. "You'll never leave, Mark." Darkness swallowed him whole. Light returned slowly, like dawn breaking after a nightmare. Mark blinked against the fluorescent glow. He was on the floor, sprawled behind the counter, chest heaving as though he'd run for miles. His bat lay across his legs. The store looked normal again. Bright. Empty. Silent. No shattered bulbs. No smeared words on glass. No gaunt figure dragging itself across the linoleum. Had he blacked out? He struggled to his feet, every muscle trembling. The security monitors flickered back to life. Static, then the usual feeds. Parking lot, stockroom aisles. Empty. Mark's reflection caught his eye in the counter glass. His face was pale, hollow-eyed. He looked 10 years older than when he'd clocked in. The clock above the register read 5:59 a.m. Sunrise wasn't far. Relief washed over him. He just had to hold out a little longer. He poured another coffee with shaking hands, though his stomach recoiled at the smell. Anything to keep him grounded. At 6:07, the bell chimed. Mark jumped so hard he spilled the coffee across his wrist. He hissed, jerking back, heart pounding. The doors slid open. A man stepped in. Not the thing. Not the hooded figure. Just a customer. Middle-aged, in a wrinkled suit, tie half undone. He rubbed his eyes, grabbed a newspaper and an energy drink, then shuffled to the counter. Mark stared at him, too rattled to speak. The man frowned. Rough night. Mark forced a shaky laugh. Yeah, something like that. The man paid, muttered thanks, and left. The doors slid shut behind him. For a long time, Mark stood frozen, staring at the bag of barbecue chips still sitting neatly on the counter from earlier. He never rang it up. Never moved it. He shoved it under the register, out of sight. By the time his shift ended, sunlight streamed weakly through the glass doors. The world looked normal again. Cars passing, birds chirping, people living their ordinary lives. But Mark couldn't shake the voice. "You'll never leave, Mark." He lasted another 3 nights. Each shift grew worse. Items appeared on the counter when his back was turned. The dragging sound haunted the aisles. The intercom whispered his name. And the figure, always at the edge of his vision, just beyond the light. He stopped calling his manager. Stopped even trying to rationalize it. He simply endured, waiting for dawn each morning like a prisoner counting days. On the 4th night, he didn't show up. Police found his car in the lot, keys still in the ignition. The store was locked from the inside. The counter neat, aisles stocked, coffee pot full. But Mark was gone. The only clue left behind was a crumpled security printout, still running when the officers arrived. The last frame, time-stamped 3:12 a.m., showed Mark standing in aisle 3. Smiling. Hood pulled low over his head. Behind him, in the grainy shadows, another figure stood. Identical. Cedar Mart still runs the overnight shift. New hires come and go, usually within weeks. Most quit, claiming the silence got to them. But sometimes, late at night, a customer swears they see someone behind the counter who doesn't look quite right. Gaunt. Hollow-eyed. Grinning too wide. And sometimes, when the store is empty, the intercom crackles to life. Stay. The lesson. We all believe routine protects us. Familiar walls, familiar lights, familiar work. We convince ourselves that the world is ordinary, predictable, safe. But the truth is, routine only masks the abyss. And some places, some jobs, some lives are nothing more than cages built over something that never sleeps. Mark thought he was keeping the store alive. But the store had been keeping him.